Hello everybody and welcome back to the Classical Music Indy Host Challenge brought to you by the National Bank of Indianapolis. I'm your host Nick Johnson, and every week a leader in classical music is sending me a piece and I'm coming up with a cocktail using a local spirit that I think matches the music in some way, and then you can make it at home. This week we have Glen Kwok of the International Violin Competition of Indianapolis. Let's see what Glen has for me.
Hello. I'm Glen Kwok, Executive Director of the International Violin Competition of Indianapolis. I'm thrilled to be here today to offer a piece which I hope will be new for many of the listeners, but also prove to be a challenge for you, Nick, to create a wonderful concoction. I chose the Sonata No. 3 by the Belgian composer Eugène Ysaÿe for solo violin with the subtitle Ballade. This is an incredible work which, interestingly enough, was premiered by our artistic founder, Joseph Gingold. So there's an incredible connection to the competition. Once every 4 years, the violin competition invites violinists from all over the world to Indianapolis for 17 days. And they're required to play an enormous amount of music over 4 rounds. And in the semifinals, the Izai Sonatas are some of the choices. And this particular sonata is very popular because it is such a great work. And when I heard it as a child, I was just absolutely amazed by the virtuosity and the new tonal harmonies that it presents. And Izai himself said, to be a great violinist, you have to be more than a violinist. You have to be a musician, you have to be a poet, you have to be a human being. And all of these elements are what make the great violinist. And when we're looking for a winner, they are the same characteristics that we're looking for. So I offer this piece. I hope you enjoy it. And Nick, I look forward to tasting your concoction. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you so much, Glen. I really enjoy hearing Ysaÿe's music as part of the competition. He writes some of the most beautifully difficult but also heartfelt violin works. Ysaÿe was known as the king of the violin. He's a late Romantic Belgian composer. Many composers dedicated works for him as he performed many premieres. Claude Debussy, Saint-Saëns, César Franck. His music is extremely virtuosic, but there's also a lot of depth and romance. So it's not just virtuosity for the sake of virtuosity. This work, the Sonata No. 3, this is a short piece, only about 6 minutes long, so make sure to make your drink before you start the music. It has 2 main sections. The first one is going to be very thoughtful, sort of introspective, and honestly a little mysterious. When I started listening to this piece, to be honest, I had no idea where I wanted to go with this cocktail. The first minute or two of the piece is very sort of murky, but then this beautiful theme starts to grow out of it, and we enter this sort of virtuosic and passionate part that it almost feels like Ysaÿe is exploring kind of the limits of the instrument, is how it feels at times, and how much a player can pull out of this violin. So after listening to this piece, I decided I wanted to do a cocktail. The 3 things I was aiming for was something with depth, a cocktail that would sparkle a little bit, and then something pretty unusual, because this is kind of a one-of-a-kind composer. And so I've come up with a cocktail that I am calling the Ballade in honor of this sonata. And the unusual ingredient we're going to be using, let's start there, this is actually a Beertail, which I haven't done here on this challenge. Beertails are becoming a little more popular, a little more hip. When I think about using a beer in a cocktail, to me, I think about it for the same way I would maybe think about club soda or tonic water, where I'm looking for cutting the alcohol a little. Obviously, beer is still alcohol, but a much less percentage than the spirit. It's also going to give us some bubbles and some life. And then when you're using a beer as opposed to a club soda or tonic, you're also getting some more flavor. I mean, I guess tonic has a flavor, but certainly not the one can match the variety of what beer can give us. So I thought it would be fun, since it was a Belgian composer, to use a Belgian beer, so a local Belgian beer. And so we're using Metazoa Brewing Company's Wit-Bellied Hedgehog. Metazoa is an Indianapolis downtown brewer. They actually have part of their whole company is that 5% of their profits go to animal and wildlife charities. And this wit is a really fantastic expression of the traditional Belgian wheat beer. There's a lot of orange, some coriander flavors with this. It's very drinkable. It's very approachable, a little bit of bitterness, but not too much. But as opposed to some American-style wheat beers, I feel like there's maybe a little more depth with this. So it's going to work really well with this cocktail. So let's go ahead and start making the Ballade. We're going to start with an ounce of dark rum. I'm using the Kraken, which is, I don't know, this winter fairly commonly being used by me. We're just going to do an ounce of this. You will notice I am doing this on a large ice cube. I forgot to mention that. But we're doing, I would normally sip bourbon or something on this type of an ice cube. We're using this because we want it to chill, but we don't want a whole lot of ice melt, as opposed to ice cubes where you're going to get a lot of water, especially since we're adding beer to this. We don't really want a whole lot of water. So rather than doing just normal, but if you don't have one of these, that's fine. Okay, so that was an ounce of dark rum. We're then going to do 3 dashes of Peychaud's bitters. So actually a fairly aggressive amount of this. So Peychaud's is a bitters that I would recommend. This is probably the second bitters you should buy after Angostura, to be honest. Peychaud's is used in cocktails like the Sazerac, which is my overall favorite cocktail. It has sort of a licorice flavor, but it adds a lot of depth and interest to cocktails, and especially on the back end is where we're going to notice this. It's going to be the aftertaste became way more interesting when I used Peychaud's when I was putting this together. Next, we're going to hit this with 2 ounces of the beer, of this Belgian Wit. This is going to be a relatively small drink. We could obviously double this if you would like. You could do 2 and 4 instead of 1 and 2. So already you can see that we're getting kind of the bubble, the life, the color kind of lightened up a little bit, the mood lightened up a little bit in the room. And then our final ingredient, we're going to try to bring out the orange that is in this beer with just an orange peel. And we are... our goal here is to have it mostly only affect the smell of the beer rather than just the taste. So we just have a piece of orange peel that I cut earlier. And then we are going to, if you have a cocktail spoon like this, you can actually do a trick where you can wrap it very tightly around the stem of the spoon. And if you get it tightly around it, what we're going to get is kind of a nice curl. And we take that off. And not only will it be kind of pretty, it's also going to work much better. You see how nice that is now. We're going to be able to get it to cling very easily to the edge of the glass. And so if you're wanting your garnish to not actually drop in the drink, we don't really want to taste the taste, we want to taste the smell of it. And this is going to give us just a nice little bit of orange and some fun presentation. So there we have it, the Ballade. So the smell is already pretty fascinating. It's sort of licorice and orange, but then the taste, the taste was better than I remembered it being. The taste is really quite delicious. We have some depth from the rum, but then we have some fruit flavors and the wheat from the beer, so it kind of rounds it out and makes it smooth. So it's a drink that's a little bit unusual, but I think it has a lot of depth in it. And then, a little bit of sparkle. And we're paying homage to the Belgian tradition here. So this is actually the last of these little mini episodes that we're doing for a little while. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get back into bars and restaurants and concert halls around the city soon. Who knows when? We might be back in a few months with some more of these. We'll see. In the meantime, I'm still going to be listening to music and experimenting with cocktails. The only real difference is there won't be a camera running. Otherwise, things are going to be about the same. So we'll be back when we are with some more Classical Pairings content. And speaking of Classical Pairings, as a listener-supported podcast, video series, and blog, if you like what you hear, you can text PAIR, that's P-A-I-R, to 202-858-1233 to help us keep bringing you the best in classical music paired with great craft food and beverage makers. So thank you so much from Classical Music Indy. Cheers.